Investigating an alleged serial killer, a Toronto woman is charged with 3 murders in 3 days. We have the very latest on that coming up tonight.
And political hot potato. The federal government fires back at Ontario. This is on bail reform today, arguing that it's a provincial responsibility.
And a jury begins deliberations in Canadian musician Jacob Hogarth's sex assault trial. We'll tell you what the jury did not hear.
Well, CafeTO bounces back big time. The city of Toronto touts the success of this edition of the program as the season begins to wind down.
You're watching Live at 5.
Good evening. I'm Bakari Sapp.
And I'm Lena Latafat. Thank you for joining us. A woman has been arrested in connection with 3 separate homicides in Hamilton, Niagara, and Toronto this week.
30-year-old Sabrina Koldar was arrested in Burlington, charged with first-degree murder and the Hamilton homicide, second-degree murder, and the Toronto and Niagara investigation. So police say the first incident happened Tuesday afternoon near Keele and Dundas. That's where a woman in her 60s was found dead inside a residence with visible trauma to her body. The victim has not been identified yet.
And the second victim was found with critical injuries in a Niagara Falls park on Wednesday afternoon. 47-year-old Lance Cunningham was pronounced dead at the scene. The third victim is a 77-year-old Mario Bilic. She was found with stab wounds in a parking lot in downtown Hamilton and later succumbed to his injuries. Investigators believe Cunningham and Bilic were randomly targeted, while the suspect was known to the Toronto victim.
And investigators are trying to identify a woman last seen Tuesday at a Giant Tiger store in Burlington buying clothing that Koldar had in her possession at the time of her arrest. So anyone with information, you are asked to contact police.
Mario and Lance Cunningham were both going about their business, and we believe that they were random attacks. We are not aware of any connection between the victims, and we are not aware of the motive at this time. We're very early in these stages, early stages of the investigation. Anytime you have a major case like this, it's really important for us to front-end load the investigation. Between our respective agencies, we have in excess of 100 investigators trying to understand, the reasons why something like this takes place, and to gather as much evidence as possible to bring the accused to court.
He's very well known not only to Hamilton community, but also to, he has many family and friends in that area. He is a retired teacher with the Hamilton Wentworth Catholic School Board. So his family is very involved in the community where he was. He attends those businesses regularly. And his whole family is very highly involved. So our heartfelt condolences are going out first and foremost to them and everybody that knew them, because they really are highly impacted by this.
And let's bring in CP24's crime analyst for a closer look at this investigation. Steve, some of the allegations are shocking, they're disturbing. How do these police services even begin to identify a motive?
Great question. And first, let's acknowledge a great police work. You've got 3 homicides in 3 different jurisdictions within 3 days, and they have somebody in custody. So you don't need a motive to prove homicide, but motive will be part of this big question. And I'm going to suggest that the motives are going to be somewhat different. And I say that because police in Toronto allege that the woman in her 60s that was found murdered was known to this accused, according to the police. The Niagara police and Hamilton police say that those 2 men who were murdered weren't known to her. So you've got 2 strangers, random attacks, and 1 woman who's known to her. So the motives could be different when you look at the entire big picture, but motive at the end of the day is something you do not need to prove when you're trying to prove a homicide.
Okay, Steve, what's the threshold for a serial killer? Like the defining line between a murderer versus a serial killer?
So 3 people. So by definition, she is a serial killer. And I can't, off the top of my head, think of many women who were accused of being serial killers. Most women who commit murders, in my experience, are domestic related. Elizabeth Wetlaufer is the only woman that I can think of off the top of my head who was a serial killer who was convicted of killing many seniors back in the mid-2000s.
Yeah, so she's an alleged serial killer, and that's important to note. Steve, how do these police services work together to get to the bottom of this? Because it's multi-jurisdictional, isn't it?
So it's going to be a joint forces task force put together. Now, the police have said that they were, first off, they connected all three of these cases very quickly. You are never in a hurry to connect cases. And I say this all the time because once you connect cases, you can't unconnect them. You have to be right off the bat. So the fact that they have connected these three cases right away certainly suggests to me that the evidence that they have against her is very strong, giving them the reasonable grounds to believe that she's responsible for three separate homicides in three different jurisdictions.
Steve, what about this giant tiger in Burlington?
Huge piece of information that the police are looking for. So this woman that the police are looking for, they believe that the clothing that she had on her was worn by this accused. So this woman could be the connection between the clothing and the accused, and perhaps this woman could provide some details as to this woman's background, what brought her out to the southwest part of the province, and what took place. Very important piece of information. She's a very key witness to this investigation.
Yeah, and it's important not to get ahead of ourselves here, Steve, but I do wonder, could there be more alleged victims out there? That's obviously something investigators have to consider. Fair
question, and the answer is yes, and I say that because 3 murders in 3 days, are these the only 3 murders she's committed? So what will happen is all these jurisdictions will open up old cases, especially where they have persons of interest who are women who are seen, say, leaving the scene of the homicide. There could possibly be more. For sure, it'll be something that the police will be looking for.
All right, CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan. Steve, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Steve. All right, turning to some other stories we're following for you tonight. The jury has started deliberations in Jacob Hogarth's sex assault trial in northeastern Ontario.
Hogarth's accused of raping a woman following a Headland concert. This is after a party in Kirkland Lake about 8 years ago. The complainant and the singer, they both took the stand during the trial, which lasted nearly 2 weeks. So the jury heard starkly different accounts of what happened. Hogarth denies those allegations, claiming that he had a consensual one-night stand with his accuser. We did speak with criminal defense lawyer Kim Schofield about the decision to have Hogarth testify.
As much as you can put a position to a complainant, and as much as a complainant's credibility may be very much in the forefront, an accused often has to give his version of what happened so that a jury will have something to juxtapose it with, although it's not supposed to be a credibility battle. In reality, it almost becomes that.
The jurors also did not hear that Hogarth recently began serving a 5-year prison sentence after being convicted of sexually assaulting an Ottawa woman.
Well, we now know the identity of the officer who was shot and wounded in Midtown. It happened earlier this week. Yeah, 29-year-old Constable Tay DeVuti was shot in the abdomen while investigating a robbery near Yonge and Eglinton on Wednesday evening. Investigators say officers were approached by 2 people at around 5:30 p.m. and one allegedly shot DeVuti and then took off. Police Chief Myron Demkew joined us earlier today with an update on that officer's condition.
I'm very relieved to report he's out of hospital and an incredible police officer. When he left the hospital, he went by his station to greet those who had supported him so closely, and I can tell you he's resting at home.
Oh, the suspect. You look at him right here. This is 21-year-old Tibor Orgona. He was out on bail at the time of the shooting. So court documents show that he was charged in May with more than 24 offenses relating to breaking into homes and stealing vehicles in York Region. He was granted bail in order to live in the building. That's where Wednesday's shooting happened. He's been charged with attempted murder and breach of a probation order. He appeared in court yesterday. His case was put over until October 24th.
A total of 3 people have been arrested in the officer's shooting. 22-year-old Amanda Odette is facing a conspiracy charge, and a 15-year-old boy faces conspiracy and robbery charges.
And the province's police watchdog is investigating as well because an officer fired his gun during the incident. The SIU says after the shooting, the suspect fled. A second officer fired at him but missed. The SIU says that none of the suspects suffered serious injuries.
Well, Justice Minister Arif Virani's office released a statement today noting that the administration of bail is a provincial responsibility. Arif is also the Attorney General of Canada. That statement goes on to say Ontario must step up and ensure their courts and prosecutors are well resourced, that provincially appointed justices of the peace are applying the law, and that bail reviews are considered when there are concerns that bail was granted improperly. Ontario must ensure that there are enough spaces in provincial detention facilities to house people in custody awaiting trial. It's time to stop deflecting and start enforcing the laws that we passed in collaboration with the provinces and territories. Now, in a statement to CP24, as spokesperson for Graham McGregor, that is the Associate Minister of Bail Reform, has responded to the Minister of Justice's statement, and that says the federal government is responsible for the criminal code. And while Ontario appoints the judges, they write the instruction manual. Their lenient system created the circumstances that resulted in an Ontario police officer getting shot in the stomach. Enough is enough.
And a man wanted in a fatal stabbing in Scarborough last weekend has surrendered to police. Investigators say 29-year-old Nelson Luong of Markham turned himself in yesterday. He was charged with first-degree murder. 51-year-old Clayton Hunt died after he was stabbed during an altercation near Finch and Brimley. This was last Saturday. 2 other suspects were arrested earlier in the week. They're also facing first-degree murder charges in the stabbing.
It's now 5:11, 18 degrees, feeling more like 21 out there. Let's get a check on the evening commute with our traffic specialist tonight, Heather Seaman, keeping a close eye on the roads. Hey there, Heather.
Hi there, Lena. Well, I'm keeping a close eye. There's a lot on the go. Just let's take a look at the cameras. Was just looking into this earlier issue, may still be there. This is on the eastbound QEW at Mississauga Road. We had reports of a stalled vehicle blocking the right lane. I'm not seeing it right now out of camera view, but you can see the volume there. So pack some patience, expect delays through that stretch. We had an earlier issue on the 401 eastbound express, I believe it was at Jane. It was a disabled vehicle, the collector to express transfer lanes. That has since cleared, traffic picking up speed. On the 404, we had some major issues southbound at Finch and Shepherd. Both those issues have cleared, but we are seeing volume from about Finch to York Mills, northbound Don Valley Parkway. That is heavy. From about Dundas to north of Lawrence, typical volume there. And let's head to the westbound Gardner. Let's bring up that camera. You can see it's jammed. It looks like a parking lot in spots from about Sherbourne to west of Bathurst. And off the major routes, a crash cleared at College and Spadina. That's it. Back to you.
This CP24 traffic report is brought to you by 407 ETR. Enjoy the journey with a stress-free commute.
It's 5:12, 18 degrees. This is Live at 5.
We are live at Bathurst and Glencairn tonight, where a command post has been set up. We'll have more on the increased police presence in Toronto and York region ahead of October 7th. Stay with us. Welcome back. There will be an increased police presence this weekend in parts of Toronto and York region ahead of Monday's anniversary of the Hamas attack on Israel, which triggered the Israel-Hamas war.
Right now, let's go live to CP24's Beatrice Vaisman, who's at Bathurst and Glencairn. Beatrice.
But Carolina, you can see one of the 4 command posts behind me. This is at Bathurst and Glencairn. Toronto Police deploying 3 others, 2 of them in other predominantly Jewish neighborhoods at Bathurst and Shepherd and Bathurst and Finch. A 4th mobile command post will rove around all of Toronto's area, Toronto area's mosques. And it's also going to allow Toronto Police to be more nimble to respond if they need to be in a particular spot. We're approaching, as you mentioned, the 1-year anniversary of the Hamas terrorist attack, a heinous attack that triggered the start of the war between Israel and Hamas. It coincides with the Jewish high holidays, Rosh Hashanah the last 2 nights, Yom Kippur coming up next week. And so Toronto's police chief saying Toronto Police will be prepared to respond to any situations as they arise. He also adds this city of Toronto has changed over the course of the last year. Hate crimes up 40% in total. Hate crimes which are anti-Semitic in nature up nearly 70%. Here's more from Chief Myron Demke.
In the context of, coming up on October 7th, we have a number of demonstrations, we know. We are going to have a significant amount of police resources deployed. We have already elevated our posture across the city. We've, as you said, deployed command posts and into our communities, and you'll see great amounts of police officers in certain areas of the city. And I ask people not to be alarmed. I ask them to be assured that our officers are there to protect our communities, and we will scale up and down our presence from time to time based on what's happening.
A similar response also happening up in York Region, in Thornhill, where there's another predominantly Jewish community. There is one York Regional Police Command Post stationed at the Promenade Mall. It's going to be there until October 8th. Vaughan's Mayor Stephen Del Duca was there earlier today talking to reporters, saying certainly members of his community feel a heightened tension, a heightened concern over the high holidays, again, considering they coincide pretty much with the anniversary of the October 7th attacks. A second York Regional Police Command Post will also be roving across York Region. When we spoke to the mayor from Vaughan earlier today, he said he wasn't aware of any specific threat, but certainly he's working with police to ease tensions and concerns as best as possible. Listen.
To know that the mobile command posts plus additional patrols, additional officers who will be out in the community both in their vehicles and on foot, that increased visibility, I think, will go a long way to helping ease some of the anxiety and the angst that we know many in our community have been feeling for the past 12 months, and in particular with tensions that are heightening right now in the Middle East.
You heard Chief Myra Demke talking about demonstrations that are likely to happen over the course of this weekend, as they have pretty much every week consistently since the start of the Israel-Hamas war. Mayor Olivia Chow just in the last couple of days reminding people, you live in a democratic society, you have the right to protest, but please do not be hateful. As for police outreach, Lena and Bakari, they do more than just set up these command posts. In fact, as part of Project Resolute, I learned earlier this week that according to Toronto police, investigators have undertaken some 22,000 hours under Project Resolutes, where senior officers, liaison officers, community neighborhood officers visit places like synagogues, mosques, community centers, other places in communities to form relationships so that if something does happen, they've already got those contacts in each of these individual communities. Back to you.
Okay, CP24's Beatrice Baseman live at Bathurst and Glencairn. Thanks a lot. It's 5:18, 18 degrees, feeling more like 21 outside. This is live at 5.
Well, patio season is wrapping up. Coming up, we'll tell you how successful the CafeTO program was this year. Stay with us for those details. Welcome back. Toronto residents are getting a new park in the city's waterfront.
Yeah, the Bathurst Key Common, it'll officially open to the public tonight. The 4,000 square meter park. It's located near the historic Canada Malting Silos and features seating areas by the water and a multi-purpose plaza that can accommodate special events and cultural programming. The new park is part of a plan launched in 2015 aimed at revitalizing the Bathurst Key community.
Well, patio season is wrapping up, and the city provided an update today on the CafeTO program.
Right now, let's go live to CP24's Lindsay Biscayette, who's in the Queen West neighborhood. Okay, so Lindsay, everybody loves a good patio. My friends and I love the patio so much that we sat on the patio in the freezing cold 2 winters ago with a heat lamp. We were the only fools out there.
Yeah, but you know what? People do that, Bakari. A lot of people are okay with sitting on patios. Even my camera Tom was just saying he'll sit on a patio until November. Even in the rain, some people are okay with that, although most patios today, I will admit, are pretty barren because it is raining quite heavily out here. But yeah, this is whether you like to sit in the patio in November or not, you don't really have the choice if you want to sit on the street, because the city is wrapping up the CafeTO program, and apparently, according to Mayor Olivia Chow, it was the most successful CafeTO ever, with more restaurants participating and more restaurants participating for longer, because 95% of the restaurants were open by Victoria Day long weekend. So revenue, I mean, that's the most revenue you're going to get. We're walking inside Kuriyish Tavern, and we're joined now with the chef and owner of Kuriyish Tavern. Thank you so much for joining us and speaking to us. You have been a part of CafeTO for 2 years now. How was this season?
This season was okay. We had a better season last year. But, you know, I have mixed feelings about CafeTO. There's a part of me which really likes it. I think it just gives a really nice summer vibes to the city. And I think it's a very essential program for not only the restaurant, but the nearby neighborhoods and the community. Because we only have, 2-3 months of hot weather, so we're going to make most of it. So that's the spirit of CafeTO. I think that is very important. But another part of CafeTO which I don't like is, it's very uncertain. The weather is very uncertain. The cost of running CafeTO is going up day by day, year by year. And as I hear, like next year is also another increase in CafeTO pricing.
Yes, so next year's, there was a 3-year increase. Next year is the last year of those fees going up for restaurants who want to participate. And you're telling me because of that, still deciding on whether you're participating.
Exactly, yeah, we're still deciding because, at the end of the day, we want to make sure if you put a dollar to dollar amount to kind of compare, like it takes about $3,000-4,000 for a restaurant to set up a patio, but not every restaurant recovers that money. Right, so I think it depends on restaurant to restaurant. I think it gives a really nice, welcoming environment for the customers, the guests who comes into the restaurant. But at the same time, it needs to make business sense. And if the prices of CafeTO keeps going up every year, a lot of restaurants are going to think about, like, are they making enough money to even have the CafeTO patio?
Something to consider for sure. Mahir, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. So there you go. And again, as I mentioned, the patios are starting to be dismantled by the city, and they should be dismantled, all of them around the city, by October 15th. So if you like patios like you, Bakari, you only have a couple more days to find some. Back to you.
All right, Lindsay Vizcaya reporting live. Thanks so much for this, Lindsay. It's 5:24, 18 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
Well, coming up, Nuit Blanche, Toronto's all-night free festival of contemporary art. It's being held this weekend with 90 installations across the city. We're going to have that story after the break. All right, Lena, the city's all-night contemporary art festival, it is back for another year.
So many memories. Nuit Blanche runs tomorrow from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. The event transforms Toronto's public spaces into landscapes and animates cultural sites throughout the city. This is really something every year. And this year's theme is Bridging Distance, which organizers say invites audiences to explore ways in which they experience and perceive distance through 3 exhibitions. There are more than 80 works by local, national, and international artists, as well as a series of talks, tours, and workshops.
Well, the TTC says that subway service on lines 1 and 2 will operate all night, with trains arriving every 15 minutes. And several bus and streetcar routes will have extra service, including the 903 Kennedy Station, Scarborough Express, 44 Kipling South Express, 501 Queen, 504 King, and 511 Bathurst. Diversions will also be in place on the 365 Parliament route, 114 Queens Quay East, 509 Harbourfront, and 510 Spadina, due to Nuit Blanche activities.
Going to be a busy weekend. It's 5:28, 18 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
A Toronto woman has been charged with murder in connection with 3 murders in 3 days, including one in Hamilton and Niagara Falls. Investigating an alleged serial killer. A Toronto woman right here charged with 3 murders in 3 days. We're going to have the very latest on that tonight.
A political hot potato. The federal government fires back at Ontario on bail reform today, arguing it is a provincial responsibility. We're going to have more reaction to that.
And a jury begins deliberations in Canadian musician Jacob Hogarth's sexual assault trial. We'll tell you what the jury did not hear.
And the all-night arts festival, Nuit Blanche, is back for another year. We'll tell you about all the cool things you can check out across Toronto.
This is Live at 5.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lena Latafat.
I'm Bakari Savage. A woman's been arrested. This is in connection with 3 separate homicides in Halton, Niagara, and Toronto this week.
Yeah, let's go live now to CP24's Sija Liu, who's near Keele and Dundas tonight, where police say the first murder happened. What can you tell us about this, Sija?
Lena Bakari, they believe the person responsible for killing the woman that was found inside this home on Tuesday is also responsible for 2 other murders across the province. They say this woman is a suspected serial killer who killed 3 people over the span of 3 days. They arrested her on Thursday at a Burlington hotel. This is 30-year-old Sabrina Coulter. She is now charged with 1 count of first-degree murder and 2 counts of second-degree murder. Let's take you through the timeline of everything that has happened. This all started Tuesday afternoon here at Keele and Dundas, where police found the body of a 60-year-old woman inside the home. The very next day, Wednesday, police were called to John Allen Park in the city of Niagara for a disturbance. That's where they found a man with critical injuries. The victim, who has now been identified as 47-year-old Lance Cunningham, unfortunately died at the scene. And the latest incident happened just yesterday around 12:30 in the afternoon. This one in Hamilton. Police say officers found an unresponsive man at a parking lot on McNabb Street North with significant stab injuries. The victim, who has now been identified as 77-year-old Mario Bilish, was rushed to the hospital where he later died. Police now say all 3 homicides are connected. However, they don't know the connection to these victims. Police say when it comes to the homicide in Hamilton and Niagara Falls, they believe these were random attacks where the victims were just minding their own business. However, when it comes to the Toronto homicide, police say there is a connection between the suspect, 30-year-old Sabrina Coulter, and the victim. We'll let you hear more from police, who are doing an extensive investigation at this moment.
I think these cases, in isolation, there was no connectivity and there was no known threat to the public. Obviously, when you have a homicide and you have suspects out there, there's always the concern that it might be a random attack. There's obviously a distinction between a targeted attack and a random attack, and we obviously take both very seriously. I think by definition, she is a serial killer, 2 or more offenses. So by definition, I think that's a fair comment.
We have video of pre-offense behavior of her in the area of our scene. Mario was at a social club in the area right before the offense, meeting with his regular friends that he meets there on a regular basis as part of his weekly routine. And so we have her present there, following him then to the area of his vehicle, and then leaving the area shortly after the offense is committed.
Take a look at the woman in this photo. This is who police are looking for right now. They say the woman seen here was buying clothes from a Giant Tiger in Burlington on October 1st that Calder was in possession of at the time of her arrest. Police are looking to see if she has any connection to the homicides, if any, and also to make sure that she is safe at this moment. So if you recognize this woman, please give police a call, or if you're uncomfortable, also give Crime Stoppers a call, and if you have any information regarding these 3 homicides. But of course, this is a very shocking and rare event with a possible serial killer with 3 murders across 3 homicides across 3 cities in the past 3 days. So police tonight say there are over 100 detectives, multi-jurisdictional investigation going on right now. Back to you.
All right, Sija Liu reporting live on this tonight. Sija, thanks so much. And staying with this case, let's bring in our crime analyst, Steve Ryan. You've been watching this story very closely. Steve, anybody can commit a crime, so I don't want to talk about stereotypes, but women serial killers, they are rare. Just how rare are they, and is that shocking to you?
It is, and so rare that I can only think of one other name off the top of my head, and that would be Elizabeth Wettlaufer, who was accused and convicted of killing several senior citizens out in Woodstock, in and around the Woodstock area. So I can't think of another one. Typically, my experience has been investigating homicides for almost 15 years, that if a woman commits a homicide, it typically is domestic related. This sort of serial killer with a woman involved. There are like allegations, of course, but it is very concerning, alarming, and unusual for sure.
Okay, so Steve, we just listened to police say, this is sort of, the definition of a serial killer in line with what you said based upon your experience. We were just talking here, again, allegations. There's no rhyme or reason. What is the connection between the victims? They're all so different.
These 3 very different victims, exactly.
Yeah, it's a great observation, and that struck me as odd initially as well. So you've got a woman in her 60s, known to the victim, according to the police here in Toronto. You've got a man in his late 40s, and you've got a man in his 70s in Hamilton. There is no similarities between all three of these victims. And I'll just make one more point. CJ raises a good point there in her hit when she talks about this witness who the police are looking for, who the police believe may have purchased clothing that the accused was in possession of. They want to make sure that she's okay as well. So if you've got somebody alleged to have committed 3 homicides, and they've got a connection now between this woman and clothing and the accused, they want to make sure that she's, in fact, safe.
Yes, 3 separate crimes unfolding in 3 separate cities. How did police connect the dots and tie all of this to one suspect, Steve?
They need to have hard evidence. So you can't lay 3 different charges in 3 different jurisdictions, 3 homicides, based on a person who looks similar. Because once you connect 3 homicides, 4 homicides, even 2 homicides, you can't disconnect them. They are connected forever. And you take those cases to court as a group because you believe that this person committed all of these. And if you get that wrong, well, the person that you've arrested for one, you've got wrong for all 3 of them. So they have to be very certain that the same person they believe on reasonable grounds committed these 3 homicides. So there has to be witnesses, video evidence that they can look at and say that's the same person. There's no such thing as it looks like her, so we'll charge her with another count of murder. Needs to be specific evidence, and that's what the police must have.
Okay, Steve, this is intriguing on so many levels. Walk us through what's happening next behind the scenes.
Well, they may try to make all 3 different police services will try to make some connection between these 3 victims. Were they known to one another? Was there a motive? And I say this all the time. You do not need motive to prove homicide, but it certainly helps with a case and helps with families to get some answers. But right now, on its face, there is no connection between this one woman who was known to the police, known to this accused, and these 2 men of different ages, 2 different jurisdictions, who police say were random victims.
Okay, much more to come on this, Steve. Thanks so much for your insights. Sure. We certainly appreciate it. Let's take a look at some other headlines tonight. The jury has started deliberations in Jacob Hogarth's sex assault trial in northeastern Ontario.
Hogarth's accused of raping a woman following a Headley concert. This is after a party in Kirkland Lake about 8 years ago. The complainant and the singer, they both took the stand during the trial, which lasted nearly 2 weeks. The jury heard starkly different accounts of what happened. Hogarth denies those allegations, claiming that he had a consensual one-night stand with his accuser. We talked to criminal defense lawyer Kim Schofield about Hogarth's testimony.
His version is it's consensual, although not the nicest of and most romantic of interactions. Let's put it that way. So I think that in order because at the end of the day, as much as this is not a likability contest, you want your accused to be somewhat likable, or at least the bad behavior explained. So I think this trial, that bad behavior, there was more of an attempt to explain that bad behavior.
The jurors also did not hear that Hogarth recently began serving a 5-year prison sentence after being convicted of sexually assaulting an Ottawa woman.
We now know the identity of the officer who was shot and wounded in Midtown earlier this week.
29-year-old Constable Tay Davuti was shot in the abdomen while investigating a robbery near Yonge and Eglinton on Wednesday night. Investigators say officers were approached by 2 people at around 5:30 p.m. and one allegedly shot Davuti and then took off. Police Chief Myron Demkew joined us earlier with an update on that officer's condition.
I'm very relieved to report he's out of hospital, and an incredible police officer. When he left the hospital, he went by his station to greet those who had supported him so closely, and I can tell you he's resting at home.
Right now, you're looking at the suspect. This is 21-year-old Tibor Orgona, who was out on bail at the time of the shooting. Court documents show that he was charged in May with more than 24 offenses relating to breaking into homes and stealing vehicles in York Region. He was granted bail and ordered to live in the building. That's where Wednesday's shooting happened. He's been charged with attempted murder and breach of a probation order. He appeared in court yesterday. His case was put over until October 24th.
And a total of 3 people have been arrested in the officer's shooting. 22-year-old Amanda Odette is facing a conspiracy charge, and a 15-year-old boy faces conspiracy and robbery charges.
Well, the province's police watchdog is investigating as well because an officer fired his gun during the incident. The SIU says that after the shooting, suspect fled. A second officer fired at him but missed. The SIU says that none of the suspects suffered serious injuries.
Well, the Justice Minister and Canada's Attorney General, Arif Virani's office, released a statement on this case today, noting that the administration of bail is a provincial responsibility. That statement goes on to say Ontario must step up and ensure their courts and prosecutors are well-resourced, that provincially appointed justices of the peace are applying the law, and that bail reviews are considered when there are concerns that bail was granted improperly. Ontario must ensure that there are enough spaces in provincial detention facilities to house people in custody awaiting trial. It's time to stop deflecting and start enforcing the laws that we passed in collaboration with the provinces and territories.
In a statement to CP24, a spokesperson for Graham McGregor, the Associate Minister of Bail Reform, says, quote, the federal government, again, I repeat, is responsible for the criminal code, and while Ontario appoints the judges, they write the instruction manual. Their lenient system created the circumstances that resulted in Ontario police officer getting shot in the stomach at 5 in the afternoon. Enough is enough.
It's now 5:42, 18 degrees. Switching gears, let's get a check on your drive home tonight. It's Friday night. Wonder how that drive is looking. Traffic specialist Heather Seaman knows the answer to that. How is the drive looking, Heather?
It's a bit hectic in spots, I have to admit. Not aware of any serious crashes right now. We're just dealing with a lot of volume across the city. Westbound Gardner, that is jammed from Sherbourne to west of Bathurst. We're looking at York here. Really busy. Eastbound Gardner, that is jamming up from South Kingsway to Dufferin. Typical volume there. Northbound Don Valley Parkway, that is heavy from about Millwood to north of Lawrence. Southbound 404, we had a couple much earlier crashes at Finch and at Shepherd. Those have cleared, but we're seeing a lot of volume from Steeles to south of York Mills. And earlier problems on the QEW at Mississauga Road cleared. And again, in town, not aware of any serious crashes. That's it. Back to you.
All right, Heather, thanks so much. It's 5:43, 18 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
Coming up, a legal victory for air travelers all across the country. The Supreme Court of Canada has upheld rules that increase compensation for passengers who experience delays.
Well, you may want to fill up today if you haven't already. That's because the price of gas, it ticked up overnight, and it is about to jump even higher tomorrow.
Here's why. Conflict involving oil-rich Iran is being blamed for the hike in oil prices. We saw a 1-cent increase overnight. An analyst, Dan McTeck with Canadians for Affordable Energy, says that the price at the pumps is going to go up another 5 cents tomorrow. That'll take the average price in southern Ontario to $1.53.9 a litre.
Well, Canada's top court has upheld the air passenger Bill of Rights.
The Supreme Court dismissed an appeal that challenged the rules that bolster compensation for travelers who are subjected to delays and damaged luggage on international trips. Air Canada, Porter, and 16 other appellants argued the regulations violate global standards and should be invalid for international flights. The court's decision to dismiss the appeal was unanimous. And Air Passenger Rights President Gabor Lukic says the current rules still leave a lot to be desired.
There are lots of loopholes, lots of exceptions in the Canadian regime, which feels like it was written by the airlines, for the airlines, and not for the passengers. What Canada needs now is to actually replicate the European Union's gold standard so that passengers will have meaningful protection.
Now, the federal rules state that passengers must be compensated up to $2,400 if they were denied boarding because a trip was overbooked.
Right now it's 5:47, 18 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Well, patio season is wrapping up. Coming up, we'll tell you how successful the CafeTO program was this year. More on that with Lindsay Biscaya.
Okay, patio season's wrapping up, but the city did provide an update today on the CafeTO program.
Yeah, let's go live to CP24's Lindsay Biscaya, who's in the Queen West neighborhood. And Lindsay, we heard from the mayor today on what worked and what didn't work.
Yeah, so Mayor Olivia Chow actually saying, Lena and Bakari, that this was the most successful season for CafeTO in a long time, partially because the city managed to get patios open earlier. So in the last couple of years, some patios didn't open or they were slow to open, but this year, 95% of patios that restaurants like the ones you're seeing were open by Victoria Day long weekend. The goal for the city was to have 90% open, so that's exceeded that goal. So good news for businesses that are actually enrolling in this, because obviously you're talking about a lot more revenue as well. The sooner you can get those patios open, the sooner you can make more money. Now, in terms of what maybe didn't work, there is some complaints about traffic and whether this kind of holds up traffic, congests things a little more. And the city says it doesn't actually have hard and fast evidence on that, but they say that they don't feel that it is. That's at least from the mayor. But we have been speaking with businesses here in Queen West today who participated in CafeTO. Some saying they absolutely will continue next year. Some saying they're not so sure. And we did speak with some of the owners, so have a listen to what they had to say.
Definitely, this is the first year we got to open, I believe it was Victoria weekend. So that's probably a month ahead of schedule compared to the previous years. That was definitely a help for this year.
Another part of CafeTO which I don't like is, it's very uncertain. The weather is very uncertain. The cost of running CafeTO is going up day by day, year by year. And as I hear, like next year is also another increase in CafeTO pricing.
Yeah, so let's talk about those increases just a little bit, because fees to enroll for businesses, as you heard, is going up. They've been going up the last 3 years, and Mayor Olivia Chow says next year will be the last year that they will increase. But they went from $14.56 per square meter to $43.70 per square meter. So a lot of businesses, as you heard, are having to look at the books and see whether it's going to be worth it next year. We did speak with another business owner on this street who did not want to appear in camera, and she said she's not going to be enrolling next year because it just wasn't worth it for her in terms of how many people wanted to come and sit on the patio. So overall, they say it's a successful year. Obviously, more improvements to come, Lena and Bakari, and you'll start to see these patios dismantle over the next couple of days. The city is hoping to have all of them dismantled by October 15th. Back to you.
All right, Lindsay Biscaya reporting live from a patio tonight. Thanks so much, Lindsay. 5:53, 18 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
You know what? You might have a chance to see the Northern Lights in some parts of the GTA this weekend. We're going to talk to CTV science and technology expert Dan Riskin next.
Well, the Northern Lights, the Aurora Borealis, no matter how you refer to the celestial phenomena, we're going to have a chance to experience it right here in the GTA this weekend.
Okay, so for more on when and where this is happening, we bring in
cool.
CTV science and technology expert Dan Riskin. Dan, thanks for joining us. First, where can we actually see this in Toronto? Because we hear about these opportunities, but you got to drive, a couple of hours outside of the GTA?
Well, it's really hard to predict. Sometimes the Northern Lights really just put on a show and you can see them from the city. Other times you do have to go pretty far north. Of course, we were spoiled back in May. We had just a spectacular show when there was a G5 geomagnetic storm. That's extreme on the scale that goes from G1 through G5. What they're predicting for this weekend is a G3. So that's a strong storm. It should be visible from our latitudes. But it's a little bit like fishing. You might have a great spot with lots of fish, but they might not be biting. And you never know until you go out there whether the sky is going to put on a show or not. So just look for some clear sky. The darker the sky, the better. But it's just, it doesn't hurt to go outside and have a look. And there's 2 different coronal mass ejections that have sent materials flying at our planet. And so we should have a peak tonight. We should have another peak that may be even bigger on Sunday.
Okay, so tonight and Sunday. Any advice for people who do head outside?
Yeah, I mean, just take it in, man. It's beautiful out there.
That's good advice.
It's a great time to be out there, and don't let all your hopes be hinging on just one thing that you have in mind. There are lots of things to look for in the sky right now. One of the things I'm most excited about in the sky actually is an early morning thing. So if you're one of those people that has to get up early for work and the stars are still out when you're going outside, Jupiter's in the sky early in the morning, and if you've got binoculars, you can see one of Jupiter's moons really clearly right now. It's called Europa, and what's exciting about that is Thursday of next week, NASA has a rocket that's launching to go to that moon. It's called the Europa Clipper. So there's a lot happening in the sky right now. It's a very exciting time. We've got Venus, right after the sun goes down in the evening. There's just lots to see. So the Northern Lights may be the icing on the cake, but it's a delicious cake to start with.
Okay, so along with that, Dan, we have about a minute left. Are there any other celestial events coinciding with this? Maybe a shooting star that we can wish upon?
Yeah, well, shooting stars, of course, are meteors, and those are sort of you blink and you miss it kind of events. But we do have a comet that's coming into the night sky.
Oh.
This is a comet that only visits Earth once every 80,000 years. It was only discovered last year, but it's gone around the sun and it's headed back out towards the Oort cloud. And in the second half of this month, it may be visible for us in our northern hemisphere. And so that's something to look forward to. Around October 14th, we're hoping that thing will become visible. And it's unclear with this comet how bright it's going to be, but it could be full-on spectacular, and it could be a dud. So like everything else with the night sky, it's a little bit of a roll of the dice, but the worst that can happen is you have a beautiful night outside to enjoy the stars, and that's not so bad.
And that's really out of this world.
Yeah, I love that.
There it
Corey's
is.
waiting to say that. CTV science and technology expert Dan Riskin, thanks so much for this. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, fingers crossed we'll get a good show. Enjoy.
All right.